Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Spoken Greats podcast, where we take great ideas from great books. Today, we're continuing with our analysis of Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Specifically, we're going to be going through Book 5 and seeing what lessons we can learn from it. Today, I am drinking a Greek red wine called Red on Black by Mitravelos, from the Nemean region in southwest Greece, in Peloponnese, just southwest of Corinth. Nemean is an appellation within Greece, and it dates back to historical times. Nemean wine was known as the blood of Hercules, or Heracles, as the Greeks called him, because Heracles, according to the mythology, Heracles visited Nemea in order to slay the Nemean lion. Wines from the Nemea region are always made from Ayurgetico grape, which apparently has tasting notes of ripe plum and forest fruits with some quite pronounced tannins. But this is my first glass of an Ayurgetico wine. We'll see, shall we? Let's just take a whiff of this now. It's definitely got some very prominent dark fruit in there. I would lean towards plum as well. A little bit of spice, but not much else. Let's have a taste of this, shall we? Cheers. Very pleasantly surprised by that. It's got some very soft tannin, like just enough to let you know that it's there and it's not just passing without incident, but it doesn't grip you. It allows it to just gracefully move past. It's very elegant tannins there. Incredibly acidic. My mouth is just full of saliva now. Christ, that is very acidic. I'm definitely getting plum and spice, potentially a bit of leather, but that is quite pleasantly surprising. Yeah, it's a Nemean wine, if you dare. I picked this up from the Wine Society in one of the variety boxes that they send out, but that would go very well with a burger or some kind of grilled meat. In fact, as we're in summertime and it's barbecue season, this would go fantastic. Please let me know in the comments what you are drinking today as we carry on with Book 5 of Meditation. So straight away, we're starting with one of my favourite passages of all in Meditations. And frankly, it's a pretty savage opening paragraph. And it just feels like Marcus is just talking to you directly. You have to remember he was writing this to himself. But my God, isn't it relatable? Listen to this. At break of day, when you are reluctant to get up, have this thought ready to mind. I am getting up for a man's work. Do I still then resent it, if I am going to do what I was born for, the purpose for which I was brought into the world? Or was I created to wrap myself in blankets and keep warm? But this is more pleasant. Were you then born for pleasure, all for feeling, not for action? Can you not see plants, birds, ants, spiders, bees, all doing their own work, each helping in their own way to order the world? And then you do not want to do the work of a human being. You do not hurry to the demands of your own nature. But one needs rest too. One does indeed, I agree. But nature has set limits on this too, just as there is to eating and drinking. And yet you go beyond these limits, beyond what you need. Not in your actions, though, not any longer. Here you stay below your capability. That's quite a savage opening, isn't it? And it does just feel like Marcus Aurelius himself is calling you out from the grave. This is a man who was emperor, was considered a god, was the top of the power hierarchy and society. And yet still, he struggled to get out of bed. That's common to all of us, apart from David Goggins, but who cares? I think this is a conversation most people have with themselves in the morning. They know that they need to get up, and it's just so hard, especially in those winter months when it's dark outside and it's quite cold in your room. And the prospect of getting out of your nice clean bed is one of the least enticing things imaginable. I actually think it's a bit kind of TED Talk style to be invoking your life's purpose when trying to get out of bed in the morning. I find that it's actually much easier to approach things from the opposite end of the scale. So set the bar so low that it's easy to score a win. So, for example, this morning, you don't need to go to work. You just need to put your feet outside of the bed. And then you just need to make it to the shower. And then pretty much once you've got in the shower, you've got enough momentum to carry on going. The activation energy is always much more costly than the energy it takes to maintain momentum. It's easier to stay in shape than it is to get in shape. It's easier to stay rich than it is to get rich. And the same way, it's easier to carry on with your day than it is to start it. So making that start as easy as possible is vital to increase the probability of success. I find the more friction that you remove from any action, the less mental energy it takes, the less willpower to psych yourself up into doing something, the better. And there are little tactics you can use. So I like to leave my phone outside of the bedroom, so I know that I'm not just going to wake up and be idly scrolling. It's quite tempting to get into a process of doom scrolling or watching back-to-back videos from the comfort of your bed. So I remove the phone and it becomes boring to just lie in bed. Another thing I like to do is I put my alarm clock at the opposite side of the room, so I cannot switch it off from being in bed. I have to physically walk across the room to switch it off. And at that point, I'm already up. I might as well just go to the shower. And often just removing that little bit of friction is enough to get things going. Part of that preparation for removing friction as well has to be done in advance. So like sleeping with your phone outside the room or putting your alarm clock somewhere, or that's another thing. If you don't have one, get a separate alarm clock. Game changer. Using your phone as a alarm clock is far too tempting to then just lie there and carry on scrolling on your phone. Prevention is far easier than treatment. If you know you're a gambling addict, you don't move in next door to a casino. You make it as probable that you won't put yourself in the environment where you're tempted to gamble. In the same way that putting your phone somewhere else removes that possibility. I found having a stable pre-sleep routine as well just helps set the mood for a good night's sleep. It doesn't have to be anything elaborate, but I like to read, for example, and before I pick up my book, I'll put my phone in another room. So that sets me on the course for winding down in the evening. It's very difficult to switch off if you're going from being bombarded with inputs from social media or you're binge watching a show to then immediately switch to going to sleep. And if you start laying your clothes out for the next day, then you're already ready. It's one less thing to do in the morning when, remember, your activation energy is at its lowest and you need more willpower just to start doing anything. But these are just some practical things that I've personally found useful. It's not as passive aggressive as Marcus Aurelius is being here. In fact, he's being directly aggressive. He's just calling us all out for being so fucking lazy, isn't he? But I find when you read this, it feels very motivating. Yeah, that's right. I'm going to get out of bed tomorrow. I'm going to do what I was supposed to do. But Motivation's not a constant thing, and you can watch some kind of motivational TED talk or YouTube workout compilation or dramatic speech thing, whatever, and you'll feel pretty energized in the moment, but that energy will not carry with you to 5:45 a.m. when you're struggling to get out of bed in the morning. You'll seem to have a pretty faint memory of that speech at that point. And so by putting processes in place which remove as much friction as possible, you don't have to rely on that good feeling, motivational energy to get up. And notice this point Marcus talks about being way below your capability in terms of your actions. I think this is a burning sense that we all have, that we're not living up to our potential, whatever that might be. It's a different answer for everyone, but it's that long list of things that we hope to do, feel we ought to do, that we just leave another day and we never get around to doing it. And then suddenly 6 months have gone, 3 years have gone, and you think about, oh, remember that thing I wanted to do one day? Oh yeah, I've still not taken any action on it. We can often put these things off. And people always talk about a work-life balance and not burning out. But I think there's a difference between not getting enough rest and working too much. I think a lot of people aren't working too much. They're just not resting enough. And those are two quite different things. For example, in an office, it's quite common to see people eating at their desk. So there'll be a sandwich in one hand and the mouse in the other, and they're idly scrolling. That 30 minutes of vaguely moving the mouse around so you feel like you're being productive whilst you're eating is not work. But it's not rest either. You're not giving yourself the full chance to actually just stop. Stop. And switch off for any amount of time. I think it'd be a case that we can be working a full working day looking at screens on a computer, and then we go home. How do we relax? We watch on a bigger screen on TV or on a small screen on our phone. That's not rest. We're still engaging ourselves, and yet we're talking about working too much. But quite often, so much time at work is taken up by distractions, busyness, which we mistake for work. It's exertion for sure. We might not necessarily be achieving what it is that we set out to do. And I think that's the part that Marcus is driving at here, is that we're not meeting our potential on the things that matter to us. The point is that you do not love yourself. Otherwise, you would love both your own nature and her purpose for you. Other men love their own pursuit and absorb themselves in its performance to the exclusion of bath and food. But you have less regard for your own nature than the smith has for his mental work, the dancer for his dancing, the money grabber for his money, the exhibitionist for his little moment of fame. Yet these people, when impassioned, give up food and sleep for the promotion of their pursuits. And you think social action less important, less worthy of effort? I think here Marcus introduces us to our sense of self-love. And we have several selves, really, because we have the self of today, right now, and we have the self of the future. And the question is, what would future you want the you of now to do now? The you of now probably wants to stay in bed. The future you probably wants to move on a positive trajectory on something, whatever that happens to be. And part of that is probably going to involve getting out of bed and showing up to do whatever it is that you want to do. And he points out the dedication of other people to their pursuits, such as a metal worker or a dancer, or even someone chasing after money or fame. And it really takes a love of a pursuit to build up an obsession to the point where you would give up sleep or food or many other things in order to do that thing. I'm guilty of this myself when I think of, I've not got 15 minutes to practice my Russian today. But in the past, I could happily block out 10 hours of time to play video games back to back, no rest. Not a problem, because I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it to the point that I would pursue it above anything else. But I would not pursue the Russian grammar system with the same eagerness, even though future me would probably want that more than me to be playing video games. But I think this ties on to a point I was making about making goals so small that they become achievable. That's what makes video games so attractive, is that they have constant progression. You gain XP, like experience points, and you level up. And you always know where you are with things. You always know what the next step is, what the next goal, quest, objective, whatever. And so you're constantly conscious of what is the next thing that you need to do. And you get a buzz from achieving it. So you're like, oh, this is great. I'm going to move on to the next thing. If we could gamify our life in that way, and break down our projects into lots of small wins, there's a lot of potential there for encouraging that kind of obsessive commitment, which something like a gamer might have to playing video games. Imagine the potential we would achieve if we were able to gamify the things that matter in our life. How easy it is to drive away or obliterate from one's mind every impression which is troublesome or alien, and then to be immediately in perfect calm. If you think about the last time you were angry, chances are that it was a flash, just a moment of a loss of control. And then gradually, you return to the baseline. You may remain in an agitated state for a while, but the absolute peak of your anger typically won't be longer than a couple of seconds. I found taking a walk is such an easy way to clear the mind and calm the body. And then suddenly, when you have the distance of time, even a matter of minutes, the thing you were agitated by starts to fade. It doesn't go immediately, it fades. Gradually, slowly but surely. I also recommend Andrew Huberman has a great, what's called a non-sleep deep rest protocol. It's literally just a 10-minute video where he's instructing you to do a long inhale and then a long exhale and then focus on various parts of your body. It's a form of meditation, but it is weird the state you're left in after it. You feel very relaxed, almost as if you've slept in a way, very rested, but obviously you haven't slept. Apparently the science behind that is that long drawn out exhales lower the heart rate, which then effectively hacks your body to calm down. I can't remember if I heard somewhere else that also that when you hold your breath, for example, and you feel that kind of stressful response, that kind of burning feeling like you're about to burst, apparently that actually comes from CO2 and not a lack of oxygen. So our body has a stress response to a buildup of CO. So it's the long exhalation, the getting as much CO2 out of you as possible, which possibly calms the body rather than the increase in oxygen per se. But I'm just some guy on the internet. Do not quote me on that. Moving on. Judge yourself entitled to any word or action which is in accord with nature, and do not let any subsequent criticism or persuasion from anyone talk you out of it. No, if it was a good thing to do or say, do not revoke your entitlement. Those others are guided by their own minds and pursue their own impulses. Do not be distracted by any of this, but continue straight ahead, following your own nature and universal nature. These two have one and the same path. It can be quite tempting to overcompensate for negative feedback. And whilst I'm not saying that any sort of negative feedback is irrelevant, I am suggesting that perhaps it can be tempting to give too much weight to it and adapt accordingly. Sometimes things have to run their course, and people will present you with challenges or opportunities to divert from the course that you're taking. This should not be taken lightly. If you have decided that something is important in your life and it's worth pursuing, then it shouldn't change direction so easily, subject to the whims of an individual. Now, it may be that the person in question has some very legitimate criticisms or some helpful suggestions. It's important to weigh those in objectivity and not to overcompensate or feel that you have to please people. Ultimately, people are guided by their interests, and what someone else thinks is best for you is probably more in their interest than it is in yours. So just have that in mind when you're taking on board criticism. I travel on by nature's path until I fall and find rest, breathing my last into that air from which I draw my daily breath, and falling on that earth which gave my father his seed, my mother her blood, my nurse her milk, the earth which for so many years has fed and watered me day by day, the earth which bears my tread and all the ways in which I abuse her. Here Marcus seems to be reflecting on the journey in life that he's taken and how everything is connected from the first breath that you take in to the last, and everything that has happened up to the point that got you to where you are today. That includes your parents, your grandparents, all the things in nature which contributed to your existence, and how you will eventually become part of it yourself when you pass. And he talks about how nature absorbs his abuse and his tread. I think this is perhaps a reminder of gratitude, of everything that has come before you to put you where you are now. It's important to show gratitude for that and acknowledge the times where perhaps you've come across as more entitled than you should have. The law of probabilities state that none of us should be here. We've emerged from the fastest sperm out of hundreds of millions, out of thousands of potential eggs. We are the result of an unbroken chain of reproduction spanning hundreds of thousands of years. We have beat the odds just to be here. It really is a marvel when you think about it. And exercising gratitude for the sheer luck that has taken place may provide some satisfaction. They cannot admire you for intellect, granted, but there are many other qualities of which you cannot say, but that is not the way I am made. So display those virtues which are wholly in your own power. Integrity, dignity, hard work, self-denial, contentment, frugality, kindness, independence, simplicity, discretion, magnanimity. Do you not see how many virtues you can already display without any excuse of lack of talent or aptitude, and yet you are still content to lag behind? Or does the fact that you have no inborn talent oblige you to grumble, to scrimp, to today, to blame your poor body, to suck up, to brag, to have your mind in such turmoil? No, by heaven it does not. You could have got rid of all this long ago, and only be charged, if charge there is, with being rather slow and dull of comprehension, and yet even this can be worked on, unless you ignore or welcome your stupidity. Life can be pretty tough in terms of its distribution of who gets what in terms of natural born talent or inherited wealth. And it's a difficult pill to swallow sometimes. You know that your intelligence will probably set the boundary of what things you can possibly learn, or your social economic background is one of the biggest predictors of your future net worth, i.e., if you were born poor, you'll probably stay poor. And to a certain extent, these things can be outside of your control, but you can change your attitude towards things. You can't change your IQ, really. There's debate on that, but you can change your attitude to learning. You can show curiosity or dedication to studying, to practicing, revising. You can't guarantee that you will be rich, but you can guarantee that you will be generous. You can't guarantee that you will succeed in something. You might not be competent enough, but you can change your attitude towards it and how you learn the lessons from it. Something didn't go the way you wanted. Are you going to turn on everyone around you and blame them or blame the world? Or are you going to see, okay, what went wrong? What can I do better next time? That is not something that's limited by talent. That is something that is wholly within your control if you want to. It is easy to take for granted sometimes, but there are people out there who will ask for £1.50 back from their friends. You don't have to be that person. It goes back to that classic Stoic principle of ignoring what is outside of your control and focusing on what is within your control. If you follow that line of thinking, I think it's a great way to establish a can-do attitude, because you're not looking at the problems, you're looking at the opportunities. It's easy to become fixated on, oh, we can't do this, we don't have that, or we're limited by such and such person or such and such rule and we're not allowed to do this. And it changes the whole perspective, and you start looking at what is possible rather than what is impossible. This is one of the things that I'm grateful for. Growing up with not a lot of money forced me to be creative in how I would achieve certain things. If I knew that money was a big constraint, are there other methods of achieving the same thing, or is there something else we can do which is just as good? Ironically, limitations is the biggest source of creativity, because when you have no limitations, it's very difficult to think of something. But as soon as you put constraints on, you start generating ideas which can comply with those constraints. That's a benefit of not having much money, is that you're forced to be creative about things, which I think is a certain mindset that someone who has always been financially secure will never have. That's all we've got time for today. Thank you for listening to the Spoken Greats podcast. If you enjoyed that episode, please like and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to check out my blog at spokengreats.com. I'll be back shortly with a further analysis of Book 5 in Meditations, and look forward to more great ideas from great books. See you soon.